Sergeant Maya Collins had been with the 87th Mountain Infantry Division for 5 years, and in those 5 years she'd mastered the art of being underestimated, not in the way that reconnaissance specialists melted into the background, but in the deliberate way combat support specialists were overlooked despite keeping entire battalions operational. She arrived at the Forward Operating Base Orion at 400 hours every morning, 90 minutes before her required check-in, and often remained until midnight coordinating supply chains that stretched across 3 provinces. Her workstation was nestled in the corner of the Tactical Operations Center, surrounded by communications equipment, mission planning tables, and the constant hum of a military base at war. At 32, Maya possessed the kind of methodical efficiency that military operations depended on, but rarely celebrated. She could recite ammunition expenditure rates for every unit under their command, coordinate medical evacuations under impossible conditions, and anticipate equipment failures before they occurred. When squad leaders needed emergency resupply in hostile territory, Maya could orchestrate the delivery down to the minute. When communications failed between forward units, she already had backup systems deploying before most officers realized there was a problem. But what nobody knew, what Maya carefully concealed beneath her professional demeanor, was that she spent every spare moment studying advanced combat tactics and special operations protocols. Not the standard field manuals that every soldier skimmed through during basic, but the advanced close-quarters combat guides, specialized sniper techniques, and classified field procedures that crossed her desk when coordinating with Special Forces teams. She'd committed to memory the operational parameters of every weapon system in their arsenal, from the standard-issue M4 carbines to the specialized Barrett 50 caliber rifles used by their marksmen during extended operations. This morning began like countless others before it. Maya was analyzing intelligence reports from the eastern border region when Captain Richard Blackwood entered the operations center, his combat boots leaving dusty imprints on the recently cleaned floor. Behind him followed his usual entourage, Lieutenant Emma Parker, a tactical officer who'd arrived 3 months ago straight from West Point, and Staff Sergeant James Wilson, the captain's favorite squad leader who seemingly could do no wrong. "Collins," Blackwood called out, not bothering to approach her station. "We need those route analyses for tomorrow's convoy by 1300 hours. Think you can handle that, or should I reassign it to someone with actual field experience?" Maya looked up from her monitor, her expression professionally neutral despite the familiar sting of his words. The analyses were completed at 0600. "Sir, they've been uploaded to the secure server with hard copies placed in your briefing folder. I've included 3 alternative routes accounting for recent insurgent activity and highlighted potential ambush points." Parker smirked visibly. "Always trying to prove something," she muttered, loud enough for Maya to hear. "Actually," Maya continued, maintaining her composure, "I noticed a potential security gap in the planned rotation for tomorrow's convoy. The communication blackout zone in the mountain pass creates a 15-minute window where our teams will be completely isolated. If we adjust departure times or position a relay team at these coordinates, we can maintain continuous contact." Blackwood's jaw tightened noticeably. He didn't appreciate being corrected, especially not by a combat support specialist who'd never led troops in a firefight. "I'll be the judge of what requires adjustment, Collins. Just stick to your logistics reports and leave tactical decisions to soldiers who've actually seen combat." Maya saved her work and stood up, retrieving a folder from her filing cabinet. She placed it on her desk and opened it deliberately. "Sir, I've cross-referenced recent attack patterns with topographical features along all proposed routes. The data suggests a high probability of—" "Enough, Collins!" Blackwood's voice cut through the operations center like a rifle shot. "You're a support specialist, not a combat officer. You coordinate supplies and manage inventory. You don't make tactical assessments about combat operations. That's why you're stuck behind that desk instead of leading patrols with real soldiers." The operations center fell silent, except for the steady beep of communication equipment and the distant thrum of generators. Wilson shifted his weight uncomfortably, and even Parker seemed to sense that something fundamental had shifted in the atmosphere. Maya closed the folder slowly, her fingers steady despite the heat rising in her face. "Understood, sir," she said, quietly. As Blackwood and his followers left, Maya remained standing at her desk, staring at the closed folder. Inside were copies of every combat certification she'd ever earned, every advanced tactical training module she'd completed in her free time, every marksmanship record she'd set on the range when nobody was watching. Also tucked away was a transfer request she'd received 2 weeks ago, a request with Joint Special Operations Command letterhead that Blackwood knew nothing about. Maya had been invisible for 5 years, but invisibility came with unexpected advantages. People didn't notice when you stayed after hours to use the combat simulators. They didn't question why you volunteered for every advanced weapons qualification that came through the base. And they certainly didn't expect you to have connections that extended far beyond your immediate chain of command. She sat back down at her station and reopened the intelligence reports. Then, almost as an afterthought, she opened a secure communication channel and began typing a message to Major Sarah Reynolds at Joint Special Operations Command. The subject line read, "Assessment complete, ready for extraction." Maya had spent 5 years learning to be invisible within the system. Now it was time to disappear completely and reappear precisely where no one expected her to be. 2 days after the confrontation in the operations center, Maya arrived at work to find her. Security credentials had been downgraded. She stood at the entrance to the tactical planning section, watching as her access card triggered a red denial light on the scanner. A line of intelligence officers waited behind her, their morning briefings delayed as she repeatedly swiped a card that had worked flawlessly for 5 years. "Having problems, Collins?" Lieutenant Parker appeared beside her, satisfaction evident in her tone. "Maybe you should try the general administrative area, where the support personnel belong." Maya stepped aside, allowing Parker to swipe her own credentials. The door unlocked immediately with an affirmative beep. "There must be a system error," Maya said evenly. "I'll check with security." "Oh, there's no error," Parker replied, holding the door open, but pointedly blocking Maya's path. "Captain Blackwood implemented new security protocols yesterday. Apparently, there were concerns about non-essential personnel accessing sensitive operational information." The officers waiting behind them exchanged uncomfortable glances. Master Sergeant Thomas Rivera, a 20-year veteran who had worked with Maya on countless mission support operations, stepped forward. "Ma'am, with respect, Sergeant Collins has clearance for this area. She coordinates all our field support and has access to—" "New protocols, Rivera," Parker interrupted sharply. "Take it up with the captain if you have issues with proper security measures." Maya watched Parker disappear into the restricted area, then turned to Rivera. "It's fine, Sergeant, I'll sort this out." But as Maya walked across the base toward the administration building, she noticed other changes. The keypad codes to the equipment storage facilities had been changed. Her regular station in the operations center had been reassigned to a junior analyst. Her name had been removed from the mission briefing distribution list posted in the main corridor. In the administration office, Maya found herself sitting across from Major Daniel Foster, the base's personnel officer. Foster looked distinctly uncomfortable as he reviewed her file on his tablet. "I'm sorry, Sergeant Collins. The access restriction came directly from Captain Blackwood. He cited operational security concerns." "Major, I've maintained top-secret clearance for 5 years without incident. My record is spotless." "What specific security concern?" He didn't specify, Foster said quickly, avoiding her gaze. But he did mention that your recent behavior has been concerning. Apparently, you've been overstepping your assigned duties and attempting to influence operational decisions. Maya felt something cold settle in her stomach. What decisions? Foster consulted his notes. Questioning established patrol routes, attempting to override tactical assessments, challenging command decisions in front of subordinates. He looked up at her with what might have been sympathy. Look, Maya, I've known you since you arrived at Orion. This doesn't sound like you, but Blackwood is building a case that you're becoming disruptive to unit cohesion. Disruptive for doing my job? For doing more than your job, Foster corrected. For acting like you're qualified to make decisions that are above your position and experience level. Maya left the administration building with her access temporarily restored to basic levels, but the message was unmistakable. Stay in your lane or lose your position entirely. As she walked back toward her reassigned workspace in the general administrative area, she passed the training grounds where Wilson was leading a squad through pre-mission drills. He nodded to her briefly, seemingly oblivious to the targeted campaign building against her. That evening, Maya stayed late again, but this time she wasn't alone. Master Sergeant Rivera found her in the nearly empty mess hall at 2100 hours, nursing a cup of coffee that had long since gone cold. "Collins, what's really happening here?" Rivera asked, settling into the seat across from her. "Blackwood has been asking questions about your work patterns, your access history, even your training records. I've never seen him target someone like this. I think he wants me gone, Chief." "Why? You're the most effective support specialist this base has. Half our successful operations in the past year wouldn't have happened without your coordination." Maya studied Rivera carefully. He represented the old guard of the military, someone who valued competence over politics and results over appearances. "Can I ask you something off the record?" "Shoot." If someone hypothetically had all the qualifications for combat operations, all the training, all the certifications, but was blocked from field assignments because of politics or preconceptions, what would you advise them to do? Rivera was quiet for a long moment, turning his coffee mug slowly between weathered hands. "Hypothetically, I'd say that person should remember that the army is bigger than any one base, and bigger than any one commanding officer. Sometimes you have to navigate around obstacles instead of confronting them directly, even if it means career suicide." "Maya," Rivera's voice softened, "some things are worth the risk. And some people are meant to be in the fight, whether or not their current assignment reflects that reality." After Rivera left, Maya opened her secure tablet and composed a message to Major Reynolds. "Situation accelerating. Request immediate transfer activation." The response arrived within 30 minutes. "Request confirmed. Report to Fort Bragg 0600 Monday for final assessment. New assignment begins immediately upon qualification." Maya printed the message, folded it carefully, and tucked it into her pocket. Tomorrow, she would submit a formal transfer request to Joint Special Operations Command. She would follow proper channels and document everything meticulously. But tonight, she had one more message to send. This one went directly to Colonel Alexandra Winters, the regional commander and Blackwood's superior. The subject line read, "Request for formal review of systemic discrimination and safety concerns." Maya had been playing defense for 5 years. Now it was time to go on the offensive. The meeting was scheduled for 0700 in Conference Room B, the claustrophobic box where careers were made or broken behind closed doors. Maya arrived 15 minutes early, her personnel file and documentation neatly organized in a leather portfolio, her uniform pressed to regulation perfection. She'd barely slept, but her eyes were clear and focused as she arranged her evidence. On the conference table, Captain Blackwood entered at precisely 0700, followed by Lieutenant Parker and Major Foster. Maya's pulse quickened. This wasn't a standard personnel review. This was a coordinated effort to eliminate a perceived threat. "Sergeant Collins," Blackwood began without preamble, remaining standing to emphasize his authority. "It has come to my attention that you've been engaging in unauthorized communications with personnel outside this command structure. Specifically, you've been discussing operational details with individuals who lack proper clearance." Maya felt ice form in her veins. "Sir, I need to see the specific allegations. Lieutenant Parker, please read the charges." Parker opened a folder with theatrical precision. On Monday, April 12th, Sergeant Collins was observed discussing tactical insertion methods with non-combat personnel in the base gymnasium. On Wednesday, April 14th, she accessed classified combat simulation software without proper authorization. On Friday, April 16th, she attempted to override established field protocols for the Eastern Corridor Patrol without consulting the chain of command. Maya maintained her composure despite the deliberate mischaracterization of events. Each charge was technically accurate, but stripped of all context. The non-combat personnel in the gym was a visiting Green Beret she'd been helping with local intelligence. The simulation software was available to all personnel with her clearance level for training purposes. The patrol protocol adjustment was an emergency measure she'd suggested when intelligence indicated a high probability of ambush. "Sir," Maya said evenly, "I can provide context for each of these incidents that demonstrates they were within regulations and necessary for mission success. Context doesn't change the facts, Collins," Blackwood interrupted. "You've been operating outside your authority. You've been acting like you belong in combat roles that you're not qualified to perform. It's time you accept reality." Maya looked at the three faces across from her. Foster appeared uncomfortable, avoiding eye contact. Parker looked triumphant. Blackwood had the expression of a man who believed victory was already secured. "What reality is that, sir? That you're a 32-year-old support specialist who will never see combat. That all your little fantasies about being a field operator, about being on the front lines, are delusions. You're not combat material, Collins. You're too weak, physically and mentally, to handle the real fight." The words hit Maya like physical blows. She'd heard variations of this assessment throughout her career, but hearing it stated so bluntly in an official setting made it more devastating. "Furthermore," Blackwood continued, "I'm recommending immediate transfer to a stateside logistics position where your unauthorized activities won't compromise operational security. Somewhere your physical limitations won't endanger actual soldiers." Maya stared at the table, her vision momentarily blurring. 5 years of exemplary service, 5 years of exceeding every standard, 5 years of proving herself daily, and it came down to this moment in a sterile room with 3 people who had already determined her fate based on preconceptions rather than performance. "Do you have anything to say for yourself?" Blackwood asked, the question purely procedural. Maya looked up at him, and for the first time in 5 years, she allowed him to see exactly what she was thinking. "Yes, sir, I do." She reached into her portfolio and extracted a single sheet of paper with official letterhead. "This is my formal transfer request to Joint Special Operations Command, effective immediately. I submitted it to Colonel Winters yesterday afternoon." Blackwood's face drained of color. "You can't do that." "I can, sir, and I did." Maya stood, her chair scraping against the floor. "While you were building your case against me, I was building my case for me. Every combat qualification I completed, every advanced tactical certification I earned, every commendation from field operators who valued my contributions, all of it went into my JSOC application." Parker leaned forward. "You can't just transfer. To special operations. That's not how it works. Maya turned to her with a composed smile that didn't reach her eyes. Actually, Lieutenant, that's precisely how it works when you have the qualifications they need and the recommendations they respect. Interesting thing about being invisible for 5 years. You learn to develop relationships beyond your immediate chain of command. She placed another document on the table. This is my acceptance letter from Major Sarah Reynolds of JSOC. I report to Fort Bragg on Monday for final qualification assessment. Blackwood snatched the letter, scanning it rapidly. This can't be legitimate. I assure you it is, sir. Joint Special Operations Command is particularly interested in support specialists who are also qualified in advanced combat operations, especially ones who've maintained their training while coordinating complex logistics operations. Maya gathered her documentation and moved toward the door. Oh, and Captain, you might want to verify your facts before making accusations about unauthorized activities. Everything I did was within regulations, and I have the documentation to prove it. As she reached the door, she turned back one final time. You were right about one thing, sir. I was never meant to be just a support specialist. I was meant to fight. The door closed behind her with a soft click, leaving 3 very stunned people. In a suddenly silent room, Maya's quarters had always been minimal, but now they resembled a tactical operations center. Combat manuals covered her desk. Her laptop displayed multiple windows of JSOC training protocols, and her bed was buried under equipment checklists and qualification records. She had 72 hours to prepare for the most important evaluation of her career. The phone rang at 05:30 Friday morning. Maya answered immediately, expecting Major Reynolds with final instructions. Instead, she heard Rivera's voice. Collins, we need to talk. Now. 20 minutes later, Maya opened her door to find not just Rivera, but Staff Sergeant Wilson and Technical Sergeant Amira Nazari from the communications section. They had the unmistakable look of people engaged in something unauthorized. What's happening, Chief? Maya asked, stepping aside to let them enter. Rivera surveyed her quarters, taking in the evidence of her preparations. Damn, Maya, you really were ready all along. Words circulating throughout the base, Wilson said, his usual cockiness replaced by something resembling respect. About your transfer, about JSOC, about what happened in that meeting with Blackwood. Nazari, who rarely spoke above a whisper, stepped forward. Maya, I need to tell you something. Blackwood tried to get me to falsify communications logs showing you accessed classified channels without authorization. He wanted me to backdate them to support his claims. Maya felt her stomach tighten. What did you tell him? I told him to get lost, Nazari said with unexpected firmness. But Maya, he's not finished. He's calling in favors, trying to get people to corroborate his accusations. He's scared. Scared of what? Rivera sat heavily on the only chair in the room. He's scared that you're going to expose him for the fraud he is. Think about it. If you succeed with JSOC, if you actually become a combat operator, it proves that every time he's dismissed female support personnel as too weak for combat roles, he was wrong. And if he was wrong about you, what else has he been wrong about? Maya sank onto the edge of her bed, suddenly feeling the weight of the situation. So what do I do? You pass that assessment, Wilson said firmly. You become the operator you were meant to be, and you prove that judgment based on preconceptions, rather than performance, is a liability in the field. But what if I'm not ready? What if all my training isn't enough? Nazari pulled a flash drive from her pocket. These are the real after-action reports from the Eastern Corridor for the past 2 years. The ones that show how many times Blackwood's tactical genius nearly got people killed, and how many times your logistics coordination and intelligence analysis saved missions that were falling apart. Maya stared at the flash drive. Why are you showing me this? Because if Blackwood tries to sabotage your JSOC transfer, you'll need leverage, Rivera said. And because we've all seen what happens when good soldiers stay quiet about bad leadership. That afternoon, Maya drove to a small private range outside the base perimeter. She'd been coming here for 18 months, training with retired Delta Force operator Marcus Chen. Chen had seen combat on 4 continents during his 25-year career, and he'd become Maya's mentor in tactics that went far beyond what standard training covered. So, Chen said as they walked toward the secluded training area, Monday is the big day. I'm terrified, Maya admitted. Good. Fear keeps you honest. But Maya, I've trained hundreds of operators, and you have something rare. You have peripheral awareness. The way you process multiple threats simultaneously, the way you adapt to changing tactical environments, the way you think 3 moves ahead, that's not something you can teach. It's instinctive. They spent the next 3 hours running through advanced combat scenarios, close quarters battle in restricted environments, multiple target acquisition under stress, tactical decision-making with incomplete intelligence. Maya handled each challenge with the calm precision that had made her exceptional at logistics work. You know what your real advantage is, Chen said as they cleaned their weapons afterward. You've spent 5 years understanding how combat operations work from the support side. Most operators know how to fight, but they don't really understand the full spectrum of what makes missions succeed or fail. Most combat leaders think logistics is just about bullets and bandages, Maya replied. They don't see how supply chains, intelligence flows, and communication networks create the foundation for everything they do. That evening, Maya sat at her small desk, reviewing her JSOC acceptance letter for the 20th time. The official language was clinical and precise, but buried in the 4th paragraph was a line that made her pulse quicken whenever she read it. Upon successful completion of assessment, candidate will be assigned to specialized rapid response team focusing on high-risk extraction operations in denied access environments. She picked up her phone and dialed a number she'd memorized but never called. Reynolds. Major, this is Sergeant Collins. Maya, are you prepared for Monday? Yes, ma'am, but I need to ask something. If I pass the assessment, what happens to my current assignment? There was a brief silence. Your current commanding officer will be notified of your transfer to JSOC. Your new assignment will be classified, but I can tell you that you'll be working with some of the most elite operators in the military. Maya felt a smile forming. Including some I've helped support from the logistics side? Precisely. Maya, I want you to understand something. The position you're being considered for isn't just about combat skills. It's about being part of a team that operates beyond conventional boundaries, beyond traditional command structures. You'll be representing not just the Army, but the entire Joint Special Operations community. I understand, ma'am. Good. Get some rest. Monday starts early. Maya hung up and looked around her quarters one more time. In 72 hours, everything would change. She would either prove that 5 years of preparation had been worth it, or she would fail in the most public and definitive way possible. Either way, she'd finally know what she was truly capable of. Fort Bragg at 500 hours was a different universe than the logistics center where Maya had spent the past 5 years. The training grounds buzzed with activity as Special Forces teams conducted pre-dawn exercises and assessment groups prepared for the day's evaluations. Maya stood in the early morning darkness, her gear bag slung over her shoulder, watching operators move with practiced efficiency through their routines. This was the world she'd been preparing to join, not as support staff, but as an equal. Sergeant Collins! Maya turned to see a compact woman in tactical gear approaching. The name tape read, Captain Reyes. No relation to anyone at Forward Orion, but the coincidence made Maya's stomach tighten. That's me, ma'am. I'm your assessment officer today. I understand you've been working toward this opportunity for quite some time. Maya nodded, her throat suddenly dry, despite the 2 cups of coffee she'd consumed during the 3-hour drive to Fort Bragg. Before we begin, I want you to know that I've reviewed your file thoroughly. Your support record is impressive, and your training scores are exceptional. But simulations and training aren't reality, and today we're going to find out if you have what it takes to handle the real thing. They walked toward a complex of buildings that housed the assessment center. Maya had studied the JSOC selection process meticulously, but seeing the actual facilities made everything suddenly more concrete. We'll start with physical assessment, then move to tactical decision-making, weapons proficiency, and finally, scenario-based evaluation, Reyes explained. Most candidates find the last part most challenging. It combines physical stress, sleep, deprivation, and complex problem-solving. The next 12 hours were the most grueling of Maya's life. The physical assessment pushed her to absolute limits. Endurance runs with full combat load, obstacle courses designed to test both strength and agility, and close-quarters combat against experienced operators. Maya's muscles burned and her lungs screamed for oxygen, but she refused to quit. During the tactical assessment, she drew on her years of studying combat operations from the support side. When presented with complex scenarios involving multiple variables, she demonstrated a holistic understanding that impressed even the veteran operators conducting the evaluation. Most candidates approach these problems from a purely tactical perspective, Captain Reyes noted as Maya completed a particularly challenging scenario. You're integrating logistics, intelligence, and tactical considerations simultaneously. That's rare. It's how real operations work, Mom. Everything's connected. The weapons qualification came next. Maya demonstrated proficiency with every platform they placed before her. Rifles, pistols, shotguns, specialized weapons. Years of private training with Chen had given her muscle memory and precision that surprised the assessment team. "Where did you learn to shoot like that, Collins?" asked Master Sergeant Diaz, the head of the weapons assessment. "On my own time, sir. 5 years of it." As dusk fell, the final phase began, the scenario-based evaluation. Maya, already exhausted from the day's assessment, was inserted into a simulated hostile environment with minimal equipment and a complex extraction mission. For the next 8 hours, she navigated the challenge, making critical decisions under pressure, adapting to changing conditions, and demonstrating the core qualities JSOC required. When she finally completed the scenario at 200 hours, Captain Reyes was waiting. "That's it, Collins. Assessment complete. How did I do, ma'am?" Reyes studied her for a long moment. "Official results come tomorrow, but I'll tell you this. In 5 years of running assessments, I've rarely seen someone with your combination of tactical awareness and strategic thinking. Get some rest. You've earned it." Maya slept for 4 hours in a Spartan barracks room, her dreams filled with fragments of the day's challenges. At 0700, she reported to the administration building as instructed, her uniform fresh, but her body still aching from the previous day's ordeal. Major Reynolds was waiting in a small conference room, a folder open before her. "Sergeant Collins, please sit down." Maya sat, her back straight despite her exhaustion, her face neutral despite the anxiety churning in her stomach. "I've reviewed your assessment results," Reynolds began, her expression unreadable. Captain Reyes was quite thorough in her evaluation. Maya waited, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "You've set several records in the tactical decision-making module. Your weapons proficiency is in the top percentile. Your physical performance, while not record-setting, demonstrated the required endurance and resilience. And your performance in the scenario-based evaluation showed exactly the kind of adaptability we need." Reynolds closed the folder and looked directly at Maya. "Welcome to Joint Special Operations Command, Staff Sergeant Collins." Maya blinked. "Staff Sergeant?" The promotion comes with the assignment. Congratulations, Maya. You've earned it. As they discussed the details of her new assignment, Maya felt tears threatening. 5 years of preparation, 5 years of being told she wasn't qualified, 5 years of being dismissed as too weak for combat roles. And now she was exactly where she belonged, among the elite operators she'd supported from the shadows. When do I start, Ma'am? Immediately. Your new team is already waiting to meet you. And Maya, they specifically requested you based on your support work with their operations. They know exactly what you're capable of. The phone in Captain Blackwood's office started ringing at 0830 hours and didn't stop. Maya's transfer to JSOC had been confirmed through official channels, and word was spreading through Forward Orion like wildfire. The support specialist who'd been dismissed as too weak for combat had just qualified for one of the most elite combat units in the military. Sir, you need to see this. Lieutenant Parker burst into Blackwood's office, her usual confidence noticeably diminished. She held up her tablet, displaying an official notification from Central Command. Effective immediately, Sergeant Maya Collins is transferred to Joint Special Operations Command under Operational Directive 33527. All material pertaining to Sergeant Collins's qualifications and performance evaluations are to be forwarded to Major Sarah Reynolds, JSOC Personnel Division. Blackwood read the notification 3 times, his jaw tightening with each reading. This proves nothing, he said finally. Anyone can transfer to a support role in JSOC. That doesn't make her a combat operator. Sir, Parker swallowed hard. The transfer code 33527 designates specialized combat operations personnel. It's not a support role. And there's more. She's been promoted to Staff Sergeant. The implications hit Blackwood like a physical blow. If Maya had been accepted as a combat operator and promoted in the process, it meant her qualifications had been validated at the highest levels. It meant everything he'd said about her being too weak for combat had been definitively refuted by the most elite fighting force in the military. "Get me Colonel Winters on the phone," Blackwood said quietly. Issue. Conversation with his superior was brief and uncomfortable. Colonel Winters had already been contacted by JSOC, confirming Maya's transfer and commending her exceptional performance during assessment. She'd also received several messages from other personnel at FOB Orion, inquiring about the circumstances surrounding Maya's departure. "Richard," Colonel Winters said, using Blackwood's first name in a tone that indicated this was not a friendly conversation. "I need to understand what happened with Sergeant Collins." JSOC marked her transfer as urgent and mentioned she'd been operating under adverse conditions at her previous assignment. Blackwood felt sweat forming on his forehead. "Ma'am, I was simply maintaining unit discipline and ensuring proper role assignment based on demonstrated capabilities. I've been reviewing the documentation you submitted regarding Collins's performance issues. Interesting reading. You claim she was insubordinate and exceeded her authority, but I've also been examining her actual performance records. 5 years of superior ratings, multiple commendations, and not a single disciplinary action until this sudden flurry of complaints from you. Ma'am, her recent behavior, Winters interrupted, appears to have been preparation for a JSOC assignment that she obtained through her own qualifications and initiative. An assignment that reflects exceptionally well on this command and on the Army as a whole, unless there's something you're not telling me." Blackwood realized he was trapped. Any attempt to further discredit Maya would now appear like deliberate obstruction of a valuable military asset. "No, ma'am. I may have misinterpreted the scope of her activities." "I see. Well, I think we need to have a longer conversation about your personnel management approach. My office, 1 hour." After hanging up, Blackwood sat at his desk, staring at the wall. Within the span of a few hours, his carefully constructed narrative about Maya's inadequacies had disintegrated. Worse, he was beginning to realize that several People on the base had been documenting his treatment of her, and those records would not present him in a favorable light. Meanwhile, at Fort Bragg, Maya was completing her final briefing as a newly minted JSOC operator. Major Reynolds handed her a folder containing her new assignment details. "You'll be stationed with Task Force Sierra at our Forward Operating Base in Razul Province," Reynolds explained. "Your team specializes in high-risk extraction operations in denied access territory. You'll be conducting everything from intelligence, gathering to direct action missions, working with operators from across the Special Operations community." Maya reviewed the assignment details, hardly believing what she was reading. "Ma'am, this is exactly what I've been training for." "I know. Your background in combat support gives you a unique perspective on special operations. You understand the entire operational spectrum from intelligence to execution. That's precisely what we need for these complex missions." "What about my previous assignment, Captain Blackwood?" Reynolds' expression hardened slightly. "Your former commander is currently having a conversation with his superior about his personnel management practices. I suspect he's learning that talented operators don't materialize out of nowhere. They're developed through proper leadership and support. When you try to suppress talent instead of nurturing it, you end up losing valuable assets to organizations that know how to recognize potential." Maya felt a mixture of satisfaction and regret. She'd achieved her goal, but at the cost of burning bridges with her former unit. "I hope I didn't cause too much trouble." "Maya, you didn't cause trouble. You revealed trouble that already existed. There's a difference." That afternoon, Maya received a call from Rivera. "Maya, I just wanted to tell you that the entire support staff watched Captain Blackwood get called into Colonel Winter's office today. The meeting lasted 3 hours. He came out looking like he'd been through a firefight and lost badly." "How's everyone taking the news?" "Mixed reactions. The people who actually worked with you are proud as hell. The people who dismissed you are suddenly reviewing their assessment criteria. Let's just say that Blackwood is having a very bad day. Word is that Colonel Winters is conducting a full review of his command decisions." Maya felt a pang of guilt. "I never wanted to hurt anyone's career." "Maya, you didn't hurt anyone's career. You saved your own, and you showed a lot of people on this base that excellence doesn't always look like what they expect. You've got support specialists now asking about combat training, communications techs inquiring about operator qualifications. You've inspired people. I just wanted to fight. I know, but sometimes when you reach for what you want, you show other people what's possible for them too. That's not a bad thing." After ending the call, Maya walked to the window of her temporary quarters at Fort Bragg. Tomorrow she would fly to her new assignment. She'd be working with some of the most elite operators in the military, conducting missions that would test every skill she'd developed over the past 5 years. But tonight, she was thinking about the invisible people at bases around the world. The support specialists, logistics officers, and communications technicians who kept everything running while others took the glory. She hoped her story would reach some of them, and that they'd understand that being underestimated could be leveraged if you used it correctly. Maya had spent 5 years learning to be invisible within the system. Now she was ready to show the world exactly what invisible people could accomplish when they finally stepped into the light. 2 weeks after Maya's transfer to JSOC, the investigation into Captain Blackwood's leadership practices was complete. The briefing room at FOB Orion was filled with personnel from across the base. Everyone from senior officers to junior enlisted, all summoned to hear the findings of Colonel Winter's review. Maya wasn't there, of course. She was 7,000 miles away, at the JSOC Forward Operating Base, preparing for her first official mission as a combat operator. But her presence was felt in every document, every witness statement, every piece of evidence that had been gathered about her treatment. The review has revealed several concerning patterns. Colonel Winters announced to the assembled group. First, we found evidence of discriminatory practices in assignment and advancement opportunities. Second, there were multiple instances of retaliation against personnel who questioned established procedures. Third, and most troubling, we found evidence of deliberate suppression of personnel advancement based on gender bias rather than performance metrics. Master Sergeant Rivera sat in the front row, watching Captain Blackwood's face grow increasingly pale with each revelation. Next to him, Technical Sergeant Nazari held a tablet containing the records that had helped build the case against Blackwood's leadership. The most egregious example, Winters continued, involves former Sergeant Maya Collins, now Staff Sergeant Collins of Joint Special Operations Command. Despite 5 years of exemplary service, advanced qualifications obtained through her own initiative, and performance metrics that exceeded many of our combat personnel, she was systematically excluded from advancement opportunities and subjected to increasing restrictions on her duties. Lieutenant Parker shifted uncomfortably in her seat. 2 weeks ago, she'd been part of Blackwood's inner circle. Now she was realizing how her participation in Maya's humiliation appeared to the rest of the command. Furthermore, Winters said, her voice growing colder, when Sergeant Collins attempted to pursue legitimate career advancement through proper channels, she was subjected to fabricated accusations, inappropriate security clearance restrictions, and what can only be described as a coordinated campaign designed to force her resignation. The room was completely silent, except for the hum of the air conditioning system. Everyone present had witnessed pieces of Maya's treatment, but hearing it presented systematically was damning. The irony, Winters continued, is that while Captain Blackwood was building a case to remove Collins from the Army entirely, she was being recruited by Joint Special Operations Command as one of the most promising operator candidates they'd seen in years. Her performance during assessment was described as exceptional, and her background in logistics and combat support was considered invaluable for complex special operations missions. Staff Sergeant Wilson raised his hand. "Ma'am, what staff? Sergeant Collins' current status?" Winters consulted her notes. "She's completed her initial integration phase and has been assigned to Task Force Sierra, responsible for high-risk extraction operations in denied access environments. 3 days ago, she successfully completed her first mission, a reconnaissance operation that required infiltrating hostile territory under extreme conditions. Her team leader described her performance as flawless." A murmur ran through the room. The support specialist they'd known was now conducting classified combat missions with elite special operations teams. "The question before us," Winter said, "is how we ensure this kind of leadership failure doesn't happen again. We lost a valuable operator not because she wasn't qualified, but because her immediate supervisor couldn't see past his own preconceptions." She turned her attention directly to Blackwood. "Captain, you have 2 options. You can request immediate reassignment to a non-leadership position at another installation, or you can face formal disciplinary proceedings that will likely result in your separation from the Army. I'll give you 24 hours to decide." After the meeting, Rivera found himself in the parking lot with several other NCOs who had worked closely with Maya. The mood was somber but satisfied. "I keep thinking about her last day here," Wilson said. "When she walked out of that meeting, with her head held high, she knew something we didn't. She knew she was better than how she was being treated. And she did something about it," Nazari replied, "instead of just accepting it as the way things are." Sergeant Ana Martinez, who rarely spoke in group settings, surprised everyone with her next comment. "My sister's thinking about joining the Army. Last night I told her about Maya. I told her that's what happens when you work hard and don't let anyone tell you what you can't do because of who you are." Meanwhile, in the administration building, Blackwood sat alone in his office, staring at his computer screen. He'd already begun typing his transfer request, knowing that fighting the charges would only make things worse. The evidence against him was overwhelming, and several of his former allies had provided statements supporting the investigation's findings. His phone buzzed with a message from Lieutenant Parker. "Sir, I wanted to apologize for my role in what happened to Maya. I was wrong and I'm sorry." Similar messages had been arriving all day. People who had participated in Maya's marginalization were now distancing themselves, realizing how badly they'd misjudged the situation. The base that had once seemed unified under his leadership was now questioning everything he'd told them about combat readiness, qualifications, and who deserved respect. That evening, Rivera received a video call from Maya herself. The connection was poor, the image grainy, but Maya's face was unmistakable, even in the dim light of what appeared to be a tactical operations center. "Chief, I heard about the investigation results. How's everyone handling it?" "Mixed feelings," Rivera admitted. "People are happy you got what you deserved, but there's some guilt about not speaking up sooner." "No one should feel guilty," Maya said firmly. "Military hierarchy exists for a reason. People were following the chain of command. I don't blame anyone for that." "What about Blackwood?" Maya was quiet for a moment. "I feel sorry for him, actually. He was so focused on maintaining traditional combat roles that he couldn't recognize talent when it was right in front of him. That's not just bad leadership. It's a tactical liability that puts missions at risk." "Any regrets about how things went down?" "Only one," Maya replied. "I wish I'd found the courage to fight back sooner. Maybe if I had, other qualified people wouldn't have been subjected to the same treatment." "Maya, you fought back at exactly the right time, in exactly the right way, and you inspired a lot of people here to think differently about what's possible." After ending the call, Rivera walked out to the training area, where he often found himself when he needed to think. A group of young soldiers were running combat drills, including several female support specialists who'd been inspired by Maya's story. "Chief, is it true that Staff Sergeant Collins qualified for Task Force Sierra on her first attempt?" asked a logistics specialist who'd recently started combat training. Rivera smiled. "She did. And you know why? Because Maya Collins understood something that too many people forget. True combat readiness isn't just about physical strength. It's about tactical awareness, adaptability, and understanding the entire operational spectrum. She mastered those elements while everyone was focusing on what they thought she couldn't do." 3 months later, Maya crouched in the shadow of a bombed-out building. Her team spread out in defensive positions around her. The extraction mission had gone sideways when unexpected enemy reinforcements cut off their primary exfiltration route. As the team's specialist in tactical logistics and route planning, Maya was rapidly formulating alternative options. "Sierra Actual, this is Sierra 6, she whispered into her comm unit. "Primary route compromised. Hostile forces have established blocking positions at all pre-planned alternates, requesting satellite reconnaissance of Sector 7-4 for possible new exfil." "Negative, Sierra 6, came the response. "Satellite assets unavailable for next 40 minutes. You're on your own." Maya processed this information while scanning the urban terrain around them. The team had a high-value intelligence asset to extract, the window was closing, and conventional options were exhausted. This was where her unique background proved invaluable. "Sierra team, rally on my position," she ordered. "I have a new route." Captain Eric Ramirez, the team leader, moved to her position. "What are you thinking, Collins?" Maya pulled up a digital map on her tactical tablet. "Sir, there's a maintenance tunnel system that doesn't appear on standard maps. I coordinated logistics for a joint operation in this region 2 years ago from FOB Orion. These tunnels were used to move supplies during the reconstruction effort. How do you know they're still accessible?" I don't, but based on regional infrastructure patterns, they should connect to the drainage system here. She indicated a point 300 meters east, which would bypass all enemy checkpoints and give us access to the secondary landing zone. Ramirez studied her for a moment. That's why they wanted you on this team. Let's move. The team moved silently through the darkened streets, Maya leading them to a nondescript utility access point. The tunnel beyond was narrow and partially flooded, but it was unguarded and provided a direct route that circumvented the enemy's carefully planned containment strategy. 40 minutes later, they emerged at the extraction point, their high-value asset secure, the mission accomplished through a solution that had been invisible to standard tactical planning. As the extraction helicopter descended, Ramirez clasped Maya's shoulder. Collins, when we get back to base, I'm putting you in for a commendation. That wasn't just quick thinking, that was the kind of operational awareness that saves lives. Maya nodded, feeling a sense of validation that went beyond any formal recognition. She had been exactly where she needed to be, doing exactly what she was meant to do, not because she was trying to prove anything anymore, but because this was where her skills and preparation had led her. The mission that would define Maya's career began, like many others, with minimal warning and incomplete intelligence. Task Force Sierra had been deployed to a remote forward operating position near the border of a contested region. Intelligence indicated that a high-value target was operating in the area, coordinating attacks on coalition forces. Maya was reviewing satellite imagery in the Tactical Operations Center when Captain Ramirez entered with the mission brief. Listen, up team, we have a time-sensitive target in Sector 12. Intelligence believes Tariq al-Sayed is meeting with local cell leaders at a compound 20 kilometers north of our position. Our window is narrow. We need to move in the next 3 hours. Maya studied the intelligence packet, immediately noticing discrepancies in the pattern analysis. Sir, these movement patterns don't match al-Sayed's historical behavior. He's never met associates this close to coalition positions before. Ramirez nodded. I had the same concern. That's why you're taking point on the mission planning. If this is legitimate, we need the most direct approach possible. If it's a trap, we need to identify the real objective and adjust accordingly. 6 hours later, Maya was positioned on a ridge overlooking the target compound, observing through a high-powered scope while the rest of the team maintained a defensive perimeter. What she saw confirmed her suspicions. The patterns of movement didn't match the intelligence briefing. Instead of a high-level meeting, the compound appeared to be a staging area for something else entirely. Sierra Actual, this is Sierra 6, she reported. Target location shows minimal security presence, not consistent with HVT protocols. I'm seeing significant supply movement toward the eastern buildings. Request permission to maintain observation, rather than immediate action. Granted, Sierra 6. What's your assessment? This isn't a leadership meeting. It's a logistics hub. They're moving weapons and equipment, not protecting personnel. Recommend we track the supply chain rather than hitting the compound. It could lead us to the actual operational base. Your call, Collins. You've got tactical lead on this one. Maya directed the team to establish multiple observation points around the compound. Over the next 12 hours, they documented every vehicle, every personnel movement, building a comprehensive picture of the operation. When a heavily laden truck departed under cover of darkness, they were ready. Following at a safe distance, the team tracked the vehicle to a larger compound, concealed in a remote valley, a location that hadn't appeared in any intelligence briefings. Maya's methodical approach had uncovered what appeared to be the actual regional operations center for the insurgent network. Sierra Actual, requesting satellite reconnaissance on these coordinates and permission to establish full surveillance. On the new target, For the next 3 days, Task Force Sierra maintained continuous observation of the compound, documenting personnel movements, security rotations, and communications patterns. Maya's background in logistics allowed her to identify key vulnerabilities in the compound's operation: the timing of supply deliveries, gaps in security coverage, and communication windows. When the order finally came to raid the compound, the operation was planned around these insights. The team infiltrated during a precise 30-minute window when guard rotations and supply deliveries created a temporary gap in the security perimeter. The operation was proceeding exactly as planned until an unexpected communications burst from the compound triggered defensive measures they hadn't anticipated. The team found themselves cut off from their planned extraction route, with reinforcements closing in from multiple directions. "Sierra team, fall back to position Delta," Ramirez ordered as incoming fire intensified. "Extraction point compromised, requesting immediate alternative." Maya assessed their situation rapidly. They had acquired the intelligence they needed and had neutralized key targets, but their position was becoming untenable. The team began a fighting withdrawal toward their secondary extraction point, moving through difficult terrain while maintaining tactical cohesion. Then disaster struck. As they crossed an exposed ridgeline, a hidden sniper found his mark. Captain Ramirez went down hard, a bullet having shattered his leg and severed a major artery. "Man down!" Maya called, immediately moving to his position while the rest of the team provided covering fire. Blood was pumping from Ramirez's wound at an alarming rate. Maya applied a tourniquet with practiced efficiency, but it was clear he couldn't move under his own power. "Sierra Actual, Sierra 6. Captain is hit. Critical condition. We need immediate extraction." "Sierra 6, nearest medevac is 20 minutes. Out. Hostile forces converging on your position from multiple vectors." Maya made a rapid assessment. The team was down to 7 effective operators, including herself. Hostile forces numbered at least 30 and were closing from 3 directions. Their only advantage was the defensible position they currently held, a rocky outcropping that provided cover from most angles. "Sierra team, defensive positions. We hold here until extraction arrives," she ordered, her voice calm despite the gravity of their situation. Master Sergeant Jackson, the team's senior NCO, looked at her skeptically. "Collins, those are terrible odds. Those are the only odds we've got. Set up interlocking fields of fire, prioritize ammunition conservation. We only need to hold for 20 minutes. As the team established their defensive perimeter, Maya worked to stabilize Ramirez. His pulse was weak but steady, the tourniquet having slowed the bleeding enough to buy precious time. "Collins," he whispered, his voice strained with pain. "You have tactical command. Get the team out." "We're all getting out, sir," she replied firmly. 20 minutes. We can hold for 20 minutes." The first wave of attackers came 5 minutes later, a probing action designed to test their defenses. The team responded with disciplined, targeted fire, repelling the assault with minimal ammunition expenditure. But Maya knew this was just the beginning. The enemy was assessing their position, looking for weaknesses, preparing for a more coordinated attack. She moved from position to position, adjusting fields of fire, redistributing ammunition, maintaining the defensive integrity of their perimeter. When the second attack came, it was from multiple directions simultaneously, a serious attempt to overwhelm their position through superior numbers. "Conserve ammunition," Maya reminded the team as the firefight intensified. "Make every shot count." For 10 minutes, they held against increasingly determined assaults. The team was functioning with remarkable efficiency, their training and Maya's tactical guidance allowing them to repel forces that outnumbered them 4-1. But the situation was deteriorating. 2 more team members had sustained injuries. Ammunition was running critically low, and the enemy was preparing for what appeared to be a final all-out assault. Sierra 6, this is Archangel. Medevac 5 minutes out. Can you mark your position? Affirmative, Archangel. Be advised we are under heavy fire with multiple casualties. LZ is not secure. Maya assessed their options. The helicopter couldn't land under current conditions, but if they didn't create a secure landing zone, they'd lose Ramirez and possibly others. She made her decision. Jackson, you and the team hold this position and prepare the wounded for immediate evacuation. I'm going to create a diversion. Jackson stared at her in disbelief. Collins, that's suicide. It's tactical necessity. I need 5 minutes to draw their focus away from the LZ. That's the difference between all of us getting out or none of us getting out. She checked her weapon and grabbed additional magazines from their dwindling supply. On my signal, pop smoke for the extraction. Don't wait for me, get the wounded on that helicopter. Before anyone could object further, Maya slipped away from their position, moving laterally along the ridge to a position 50 meters east. From there, she had a clear view of the enemy's main concentration, approximately 20 fighters preparing. For their final push, Maya took a deep breath, centered herself, and opened fire. Her first shots took down the apparent leader and 2 of his lieutenants, creating immediate confusion in their ranks. As expected, the majority of enemy fire redirected toward her position, away from the team's defensive perimeter. Now, Jackson, she called into her radio, mark the LZ. Clouds of purple smoke billowed from the team's position as Maya continued to engage the enemy force. She moved quickly between firing positions, creating the impression of multiple defenders. Her years of tactical training allowed her to maximize the defensive advantages of the terrain, using rocky outcroppings for cover while maintaining clear fields of fire. Through her scope, she saw the Medevac helicopter approaching, its distinctive silhouette growing larger against the sky. The enemy forces saw it too, some redirecting their fire toward the incoming aircraft. Maya increased her rate of fire, drawing their attention back to her position, making herself the more immediate threat. The helicopter touched down in a swirl of dust and smoke. Maya provided covering fire as her team moved the wounded aboard, enemy rounds impacting the rocks around her position with increasing frequency. As the last team member boarded, she began her own movement toward extraction, bounding from cover to cover while maintaining suppressive fire. She was 20 meters from the helicopter when a round caught her in the side, the impact spinning her against a boulder. Pain exploded through her torso, but training took over. She applied immediate pressure to the wound with one hand while continuing to engage targets with the other. "Collins, we need to go now," Jackson shouted from the helicopter door, firing. To provide her cover, Maya pushed herself to her feet, ignoring the fire in her side, and made a final sprint toward the aircraft. Enemy fire intensified as she crossed the open ground, rounds kicking up dust at her feet. 10 meters. 5. The helicopter was already lifting, hovering just above the ground as Jackson reached down to pull her aboard. As the helicopter banked away from the hot zone, Maya collapsed against the cabin wall, the adrenaline that had carried her finally ebbing. Medical personnel immediately moved to assess her wound. "Status report," she demanded through gritted teeth. "Captain stable. Martinez and Chen are wounded but not critical. The rest of the team is operational. The intelligence package is secure," Jackson reported. "You held the line, Collins. You held the damn line." Maya nodded, allowing the medic to administer pain medication as the helicopter gained altitude. Through the open door, she could see the enemy position growing smaller below them. A position that had nearly been their grave had instead become the site of one of Task Force Sierra's most successful operations. Back at the Forward Operating Base, Maya woke in the medical facility to find Colonel James Hendricks, the task force commander, standing at her bedside. "Staff Sergeant Collins," he said, his normally stern expression softened slightly. "How are you feeling?" "Ready to return to duty, sir," she replied automatically, though the pain in her side suggested otherwise. Hendricks almost smiled. Captain Ramirez has submitted his after-action report. It makes for interesting reading. Maya waited, unsure where this was heading. He credits you with not only saving the team, but salvaging a critical intelligence operation. Says your tactical assessment identified the actual high-value target location after conventional intelligence had missed it. Says your battlefield command under fire was, quote, textbook perfect, unquote. I was just doing my job, sir. Your job, Hendricks repeated thoughtfully. You know, when your transfer came through, there were some who questioned placing a former support specialist in a direct action role. Some who suggested you might not be strong enough for combat operations. Maya met his gaze steadily. And now, sir, now I'm recommending you for the Silver Star and promoting you to Technical Sergeant, effective immediately. The team you saved is requesting you as their permanent tactical operations specialist. He placed a document on the bed beside her. This recommendation will go through without opposition. After 3 weeks of recovery, Maya returned to active duty. The Task Force Sierra team welcomed her back with a mixture of respect and camaraderie that she'd never experienced in her previous assignments. These were operators who judged her solely on her performance, not on preconceptions. Captain Ramirez, still using crutches as his leg healed, called her into the Tactical Operations Center on her first day back. Collins, I wanted you to see this before the official announcement. He handed her a tablet displaying an internal military commendation bulletin. The headline read, Technical Sergeant Maya Collins, awarded Silver Star for extraordinary heroism. In combat, Maya scanned the document, uncomfortable with the attention, but proud of the recognition. The citation detailed her actions during the mission, emphasizing her tactical decision-making, combat leadership, and personal courage under fire. There's more, Ramirez said, taking back the tablet and opening another document. Your actions have sparked some changes at the institutional level. Command is reviewing combat role qualification standards across the board. They're shifting from gender-based assessments to performance-based metrics. Maya looked up sharply. Because of one mission? Because your performance demolished their assumptions. You were the test case that proved the existing model was flawed. Ramirez set the tablet down. But that's not why I called you in. We have a new operation, and I want you to take lead on planning. Over the next 6 months, Maya led Task Force Sierra through a series of increasingly complex missions. Her unique background in logistics and support operations, combined with her proven combat capabilities, made her an invaluable asset for missions that required both tactical precision and strategic awareness. On a rare video call home, Maya was surprised to receive a message request from Lieutenant Parker, her former antagonist from Forward Orion. Collins, Parker began awkwardly, I wanted to congratulate you on the Silver Star. It's well-deserved. Thank you, Maya replied neutrally, still uncertain of Parker's intentions. I also wanted to apologize. I was wrong about you, wrong in how I treated you, wrong in what I assumed about your capabilities. Parker paused, visibly uncomfortable. After you left, things changed here. Colonel Winters implemented new policies for personnel assessment and advancement. I've been re-evaluating a lot of my own assumptions. Maya studied her former adversary. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something that looked remarkably like genuine self-reflection. We all have assumptions challenged eventually, Maya said. The question is what we do afterward. I'm applying for advanced tactical training, Parker admitted, following your footsteps in a way. Your success opened doors for others. After the call ended, Maya sat quietly, processing the unexpected conversation. Her personal journey had been about proving herself, about earning the role she knew she deserved. She hadn't set out to change the system or challenge institutional biases. Yet somehow, she'd accomplished both. 6 months after receiving the Silver Star, Maya found herself back at Fort Bragg, this time as an instructor for a specialized joint operations course. Looking out at the classroom filled with operators from across the special operations community, she recognized the mixture of curiosity and skepticism in some of their expressions. "My name is Technical Sergeant Maya Collins," she began. "Some of you have heard about me. Some of you have opinions about how I got here. I'm not concerned with either. What I am concerned with is preparing you for the operational realities of modern combat environments where traditional models often fail." She activated the tactical display, showing a complex urban environment. "This is where I learned that strength isn't just about physical capability. It's about adaptability, tactical awareness, and understanding the full spectrum of operational factors. Those are the qualities that determine success or failure in the field." As the course progressed, Maya's reputation grew. Operators who had initially questioned her credentials became her strongest advocates. Her methodology, combining support expertise with combat experience, offered insights that traditional combat training often overlooked. After one particularly challenging simulation exercise, Master Sergeant Wilson, a Delta Force operator with 15 years of experience, approached her. "You know, Collins, when I heard a former logistics officer was teaching advanced tactics, I had my doubts. I was wrong." "Most people were," Maya replied with a slight smile. "It worked to my advantage." "How?" "No. Being underestimated meant I had to be better, more prepared, more knowledgeable, more adaptable. I couldn't just meet the standard. I had to exceed it consistently enough that no one could question my place." Wilson nodded thoughtfully. "Well, after watching you work, I'd say you didn't just earn your place. You redefined what that place could be." That evening, Maya received an unexpected visitor in her office, Colonel Alexandra Winters, her former regional commander from Forward Orion. "Technical Sergeant Collins," Winters said with genuine warmth. "It's good to see you again." "You too, ma'am. What brings you to Fort Bragg?" "Your course, actually. It's generating significant attention at the command level. Your integrated approach to tactical operations is being considered for wider implementation." Maya gestured for the colonel to take a seat. "That's unexpected, is it? You've proven that combining logistics expertise with tactical operations creates more effective combat teams. The results speak for themselves." Winters studied her for a moment. "I also wanted to update you on some developments at FOB Orion. Captain Blackwood, reassigned to a training facility in Alaska, his leadership role has been significantly reduced." Winters placed a folder on Maya's desk. "But that's not what I wanted to discuss. I'm here to offer you a new position." Maya opened the folder and scanned its contents, her eyebrows rising with each page. "Task Force Director? That's typically reserved for officers with conventional career paths." "Yes, it has been. That's precisely what we're changing." Winters leaned forward. "The position would place you in charge of a new cross-functional team incorporating both combat operators and support specialists. Your mission would be to develop and implement integrated tactical operations in high-complexity environments. You're creating a whole new operational model, one based on your experience and success. The military is finally recognizing that the traditional separation between combat roles and support functions creates unnecessary vulnerabilities. We need integration, not division." Maya closed the EU folder, her mind racing with possibilities. "When would this start?" "Immediately, if you accept. You'd have considerable latitude in selecting your team members and establishing operational protocols." That night, Maya found herself unable to sleep, the weight of the decision before her both exhilarating and daunting. She'd fought so hard to prove herself as a combat operator, to demonstrate that she belonged on the front lines. Now she was being asked to bridge the worlds of combat and support in ways that had never been attempted. Her phone chimed with a message, an update from Task Force Sierra. They'd completed another successful operation, using the tactical integration methods she'd helped develop. Attached was a photo of the team, operators and support specialists together with a simple message. "Your model works. When are you coming? Back to lead us again?" The answer crystallized in that moment. She would accept Winter's offer, not to prove anything to anyone else, but because it was where she could make the most significant impact. The barriers she'd faced, the obstacles she'd overcome, they had prepared her to create pathways for others. 2 months later, Maya stood before her newly assembled Task Force Echo, 24 specialists from across the military's combat and support divisions. Some were veterans with decades of experience. Others were promising talents who had faced their own battles against institutional bias. "Our mission is unlike any you've trained for previously," Maya began. "We're not just integrating combat and support functions. We're redefining how military operations adapt to complex environments. Each of you was selected because you've demonstrated excellence that transcends traditional role boundaries." She activated the briefing screen, displaying their first operational target, a region notorious for its challenging terrain and complex threat matrix. "Conventional approaches have failed here repeatedly. Our approach will be different. We'll leverage the full spectrum of your capabilities, creating operational synergies that our adversaries won't anticipate or understand." Staff Sergeant Rebecca Chen, a communications specialist with unexpected combat proficiency, raised her hand. "Ma'am, how do we measure success in this new model?" "By mission accomplishment with minimal casualties and maximum efficiency, by creating solutions that neither pure combat teams nor pure support teams could develop independently, and ultimately by proving that diversity of experience and expertise creates stronger operational capabilities." The team deployed 2 weeks later. Their first mission, extracting a deep cover intelligence asset from a region considered too volatile for conventional extraction methods, became a case study in the effectiveness of Maya's integrated approach. While traditional planners had focused on either overwhelming force or covert infiltration, Maya's team developed a hybrid solution. Support specialists embedded with local humanitarian operations established a credible cover. Combat operators disguised as security consultants established the extraction framework. Intelligence analysts and logistics personnel created multiple, redundant extraction pathways. When unexpected resistance emerged, the team's diverse capabilities allowed them to pivot seamlessly between approaches, adapting in real time to changing conditions on the ground. The asset was extracted without casualties, along with critical intelligence that conventional methods would have abandoned. Upon their return, Task Force Echo found senior military leadership waiting for their debrief. General Robert Patterson, the Joint Special Operations Commander, attended personally, an unprecedented level of attention for a new task force's first mission. "Technical Sergeant Collins," he said, after their presentation concluded, "your team has accomplished in one operation what 3 previous task forces failed to achieve in multiple attempts. It appears your integrated model has proven its value beyond any reasonable doubt." Maya nodded, accepting the praise professionally, but directing attention to her team. "Sir, the credit belongs to these specialists who were willing to transcend traditional role limitations. They're the proof that our old models were unnecessarily restrictive." Patterson exchanged glances with Colonel Winters. "Well, we're convinced. Task Force Echo is being elevated to permanent operational status, with expanded resources and personnel. And you, Technical Sergeant Collins, are being promoted to Master Sergeant, effective immediately. Over the next year, Task Force Echo completed 17 high-priority missions across 3 continents. Their success rate was unprecedented, their adaptability becoming legendary within special operations circles. Maya's integrated model was being studied and implemented by other units, fundamentally changing how the military approached complex operational challenges. On a rare break between deployments, Maya found herself back at Fort Bragg for a leadership conference. After her presentation on integrated tactical operations, she encountered a familiar face in the corridor. Master Sergeant Rivera, her former ally from Forward Orion. "Chief," she greeted him warmly. "What brings you to Bragg?" "Your reputation," he replied with a grin. "Half the army is talking about the miracle worker who transformed special operations methodology. Thought I should see for myself if the stories were true. Exaggerated, I'm sure, not according to General Patterson. He says your task force has the highest success rate in JSOC history." Rivera studied her for a moment. "You look different, Maya. Not just the new rank. Different how? Comfortable, like you've finally found where you belong." Maya considered this. "Maybe it's because I'm not fighting to prove myself anymore. I'm just doing the work I was meant to do. That tends to happen when you're exactly where you should be." As they caught up, Rivera shared news from a Forward Orion. The cultural shift that had begun with Maya's departure had continued to evolve. More support personnel were pursuing combat qualifications. More combat leaders were recognizing the value of logistics expertise. The artificial divisions that had once seemed so insurmountable were gradually dissolving. "You started something bigger than yourself," Rivera observed. "People who never met you are following the path you cleared." That evening, Maya received an unexpected email from Captain Blackwood. She almost deleted it unread, but curiosity prevailed. The message was brief but direct. "Collins, I owe you an apology. My assessment of your capabilities was profoundly wrong. The model you've developed is revolutionizing our operational approach. I was on the wrong side of history, and I'm trying to learn from that mistake. Congratulations on your success. It was earned through merit I failed to recognize. Blackwood." Maya sat with the message for a long time, considering its implications. The vindication wasn't necessary. Her success had already proven him wrong, but there was something powerful about the explicit acknowledgement. Not because she needed his approval, but because it represented the institutional change she'd helped catalyze. 2 days later, Maya was summoned to a classified briefing at Pentagon. The attendees included top military leadership and key figures from the intelligence community. The mission they outlined was potentially the most significant of her career, extracting a deep-cover operative with critical intelligence on an imminent threat to national security. "The situation is unprecedented," General Patterson explained. "Our operative is embedded in a location with extensive hostile surveillance. Conventional extraction methods have a projected success rate below 20%. We need Task Force Echo's integrated approach." Maya studied the intelligence briefing, her mind already formulating potential strategies. "Sir, this would require capabilities beyond our current configuration. We'd need specialized expertise in several areas." "You'll have whatever you need." "Master Sergeant, presidential authorization has been given for this operation. Full resources, full discretion." Over the next 72 hours, Maya assembled an expanded task force that represented the ultimate expression of her integrated model. Combat operators with logistics experience, intelligence analysts with field qualifications, support specialists with tactical expertise. Each member selected not just for their primary skills, but for their ability to transcend traditional role boundaries. The planning process reflected Maya's leadership philosophy: collaborative, adaptable, and comprehensive. Every team member contributed perspectives that shaped the final operational approach. "Our strength isn't just in our individual capabilities," Maya told them during the final briefing. It's in how we integrate those capabilities to create solutions that no traditional team could develop. That's why we'll succeed where conventional approaches would fail. The operation launched from an undisclosed location, using a multi-phased approach that combined elements of conventional military tactics, covert intelligence methods, and humanitarian cover operations. As challenges emerged, the team adapted, with the seamless flexibility that had become Task Force Echo's hallmark. When the extraction was successfully completed, securing both the operative and the critical intelligence, Maya received direct communication from the highest levels of military command. The message was simple but profound. Your model saved, lives today, and quite possibly prevented a major security disaster. This is the future of special operations. Standing in the secure communications room, Maya reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. From being dismissed as too weak for combat to leading one of the most successful special operations teams in military history. From fighting for recognition to reshaping the very definition of combat effectiveness. She thought about the young support specialists who were now following her path, about the combat leaders who were re-examining their assumptions, about the institutional barriers that were gradually falling. Her personal victory had evolved into something far more significant, a fundamental shift in how military capability was defined and developed. 6 months after the landmark operation, Maya stood at the podium of the Military Academy's Leadership Symposium. Before her sat a diverse audience of cadets and officers, many of whom had requested this session specifically to hear from the architect of the integrated operations model. The greatest barrier I faced wasn't physical, Maya told them. It was the assumption that I couldn't belong in combat because I didn't fit the traditional profile. That assumption nearly cost the military one of its most effective combat leaders, not because I say so, but because the operational record proves it. She paused, looking out at the faces watching her intently. The strongest team isn't built from people who all think alike or come from identical backgrounds. It's built from diverse specialists who bring different perspectives to the same problem. When someone tells you that you don't belong somewhere, because of who you are, rather, than what you can do, remember that their limitation isn't your reality. A young cadet raised her hand. Master Sergeant Collins, what would you say to someone facing the same barriers you did? Maya smiled. I'd tell them that being underestimated is a tactical advantage if you use it correctly. While they're focusing on what they think you can't do, you can be preparing to show them exactly what you're capable of. And when that moment comes, make it count. That evening, Maya received notification of her next assignment, heading the military's new Cross-Functional Leadership Institute, where her model would become the foundation for training the next generation of military leaders. The support specialist, who'd been called too weak for combat, hadn't just proven her critics wrong. She'd transformed the very system that once tried to limit her potential, not by demanding recognition, but by demonstrating excellence that couldn't be denied, not by fitting into existing structures, but by creating better ones. In military bases around the world, her story was inspiring others to reach beyond artificial limitations, proving that true strength comes in many forms, and that sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't a gun or a tank. It's the courage to stand your ground when everyone tells you to retreat. If you've been moved by Maya's journey from dismissed support specialist to combat leader, subscribe to our Everyday Heroes channel for more stories of extraordinary courage and perseverance. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment below. We love hearing from our global community of viewers who find inspiration in these remarkable true stories.